one of the things you also need to be careful of when you're analyzing a system, this goes a little bit to deconstruction of inflows and outflows. Sometimes more than one party can be involved in a system. Okay, so imagine putting together a car.
Right.
Classic example of a manufacturing system. You may make the frame of the car yourself, but you may buy the windshield, the glass for the windshields from someplace else.
Okay.
You may, outsource the upholstery of the seats. I mean,
Okay.
all of these things. There may be more than one party involved in assembling what you're doing.
Okay.
This is a concept called counterparty risk.
Okay.
And counterparty risk basically means what's the risk of someone you're working with not doing what they're supposed to, and how does that impact the system as a whole?
Okay.
Now, counterparty risk tends to be really important in highly interdependent, tightly coupled systems. Right? So, if you're, I'm big on nuclear reactors right now. So if you're building a nuclear reactor and you're relying on another party to supply the fuel rods, and the fuel rods don't show up,
Right, you're sunk.
You're sunk. That's a really big deal. Counterparty risk is particularly important because it may not be particularly apparent, or you may forget that somebody else is actually responsible for it.
Right, that's not a given that it will happen.
Yes.
Got
So
it.
actually, if you look at the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, part of the problem was that these large investment banks were effectively all selling each other insurance. And it was expected that if something happened, then, the investment bank may lose money, on a particular deal, but they didn't expect that all of these things would all fail at the same time. So they thought that they had protected themselves against the possibility of these risks going bad. They covered their downside. But that was a counterparty risk that if the other company that they bought insurance from, if the other bank that they bought insurance from couldn't pay them for the insurance,
Right.
that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
And so that's why, essentially almost the entire financial industry collapsed as, the result when these mortgage-backed securities, they figured out that people weren't actually paying their mortgages anymore. That's a really bad thing. And it created this negative, positively reinforcing self-feedback loop, right?
Get it.
I mean, everybody failed at the same time because the counterparty risks were so great.
Now, when you're thinking about this concept, are you always thinking of the other party as another business, or do you think about it in terms of employees as well?
You can think about it in terms of employees. I mean, usually the classic definition is people who are within your company, you at least have a lot of influence or control over.
Okay.
You may not have influence or control over another supplier or somebody else you're working
Cool.
with.
So when we discuss it, mostly in other companies.
Usually it's other companies or other people. But yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about it from a personal standpoint, you can look at all the projects that you have on your plate right now. And you can start to figure out your counterparty risk of, if you're waiting for something from, a programmer or a designer
Right.
or
That's what I meant.
Artist or whatever. That is counterparty risk.
Okay.
So, it's more of where do you draw the circle of what's inside or outside. But the basic principle is the same.
Okay.
Counterparty risk is really important because if other people don't deliver something that's critical to your project, then your project doesn't happen.